Hello and welcome to the Staffing Industry Discussion. My name is Matthew Klinsky and I'll be your host today. And I have a very special guest named Ryan McFadden. He is the owner of Peter Hunt Group. We're going to have a great conversation today. Let's roll the start and we'll go from there. All right. Very good. Well, without further ado, I'm going to bring up Ryan McFadden. He is on the screen now. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great. I saw the picture that you had of me up there before I came on camera. Let me point out a few things. As you may notice, that picture's a little dated. It is a little, I don't have a lot of pictures, and I apologize to everyone watching this that what you're now seeing was so falsely advertised before that. My apologies.
It's funny, I've only known you the way you look now, so you have a charming smile.
Back in my heyday as an actor, that was the old headshot. I actually spoke at an event where they used that as the promo picture for me, and it was funny because my friend was in charge of the event, and he didn't mean this as an insult, but it was super widely insulting. He came up to me after, he goes, "Hey, so a woman came up to me before the event started and was so excited to meet you. Like, oh my God, I can't wait to meet this guy. I'm going to marry him. He's so cute. He's all this." And then after the event, he said that same woman came up to me and said, "What happened to him? What happened? What happened to him?"
Life, kids, life, all of that, right?
Life, and a lot of snacks.
Ryan, before we get into it, I want to share with our listeners a little bit about your past, because I think it's going to shed a lot of light onto how you've run your business today and where you can potentially go, in the future. But you started Peter Hunt Group about 5 years ago, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And you have some accolades that you want to share with regards to not only you as a recruiter, but you as a company. So tell us a little bit about your kind of best of service experience.
Yeah, well, when we started everything, to be honest, it was a lot of hopes and prayers and unknowns, but I had a lot of thoughts coming from the being part of a large company that did recruiting, of tweaks and changes that we could potentially make and what could ultimately benefit us. So I didn't know if those would work. I mean, sometimes you have ideas and you say, well, these are going to be great, and they may be terrible. But I had ideas of changes we could make that I thought would really benefit customers. So over the last 5 years, although we haven't existed for a ton of time, we actually have been named the Recruiting Partner of the Year for 4 of the top 10 largest companies in the United States, which is super exciting and a huge compliment to our team that we've established here and the work that we've done. So,
and let me just clarify, that's Fortune 10 companies. You're on essentially the best of the best list for recruiting. So you're doing something right.
Yeah. And well, I'll tell you, I mean, it's really a pat on the back to the team. I work a full desk myself, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's not me. It's our team that's out there. So there's been when I started this, there was no expectation. I mean, to be honest, I was hoping oh my gosh, can I make $60,000 a year? Because that's what my draw was as a recruiter at a company. So it wasn't like, oh, we're going to start this and we're going to get into all these companies and we're going to change everything. So we've been very fortunate and blessed beyond belief, to have the opportunity that we've had.
And your story is phenomenal. So you were studying for your CPA. You wanted to be an accountant, and one thing led to another. You ended up being a recruiter. Can you touch base on just that story? It's a phenomenal story.
Sure. Yeah. So my uncle was vice president of a major investment firm, UBS Payne Weber, and he always instilled in us, my cousin and whatnot, that if you want to be successful, if you always want to have a job, become a CPA, be an accountant. I don't care if you like accounting or not, be an accountant. That's what I grew up hearing, on that. And because of his success even as a young kid, I would listen to that and I'd say, okay, well, I don't really have a huge desire to be an accountant, but as a young kid, when you hear that, it kind of just instills in you. So that's what my goal was. I was at UCLA getting my master's degree in accounting as a part-time student, ultimately to be able to sit for my CPA exam. And that was going to be my career. That's what I was going to do. And, I'd always thought, I knew the recruiting business. I had heard of it before. I didn't understand it, but I knew of it from the aspect of, like, I had dabbled as an agent and a manager for actors and whatnot down in Hollywood. So I thought it was a similar type of deal. And I just simply went to an agency to get work,
right,
to get a
to
job.
represent you, right? To represent
That's
you.
all it was. Yeah. And with, again, the thought that, man, I feel like I could do this potentially, but you don't know what you don't know. So
Right.
I went there and they had an interview for me to be an accountant with a city in Northern California called Benicia. Don't know if I should say that. That's a plug. Free lead for anyone who's watching this. They used a recruiter back then. So I interviewed there and I was young and I really hit it off with the person who was in charge. I don't remember what her title was, but ultimately she wanted to hire me. Well, she went back to the staffing agency, the recruiting firm that I had been presented by. And she thought what she was going to pay me in salary was the salary and the agency's fee altogether.
Yeah. Was the bill rate. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And she was shocked when they said, okay, so his pay rate, his salary is this, and here's what we're going to charge you as a fee. And she just was blown away. Like, I can't afford that. We're a city, so we have a tight budget. We don't have any fluctuation in that. So long story short, and I didn't know any of this was going on behind the scenes. I'm thinking I'm getting an offer. I'm going to start working there. I'm excited. The manager of that recruiting office there told the person who's in charge of the interview process with the city, well, if you don't hire him, we are going to hire him as a recruiter. Now, they never told me this. They didn't ask
By the
me.
way, P.S. You're now a recruiter.
Yeah. So, long story short, they ended up, the city just couldn't do it in the budget. There was just no way to make that work. So they had a phone call with me, asked me if I'd be interested in doing this. And I said, yeah, I've thought about it and I'll give it a shot. And that's what I did. And I ultimately walked into something that I had really no real experience or expertise with. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt in the first 2 weeks, I decided I was going to quit. There was no way I was going to keep doing this. I was going to walk away. It wasn't for me. And this is one of those rare times where procrastinating actually benefits you, because I didn't quit. And I didn't quit more because I was so young and I didn't know how to quit. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. So I was so nervous about that. And thank God I didn't, because, things turned around very quickly and I started to have a lot of success with them. And
do you think that your agency experience kind of allowed you to open the door to say yes to the recruiting experience? I mean, was that like hey, I've gone through this other challenge before in my life, maybe that prepared me for success in recruiting? Or do you think that was kind of just coincidental?
In terms of agency, you mean
like when you were like,
or?
Yeah, both really. It's, because you said that you were kind of in the acting space of working with agents at that time. So do you think that kind of experience kind of not open the door, but kind of allowed you to walk through the door that was presented to you?
Yeah, because I saw them. And by the way, I've brought this up many times to the bosses that I've worked for over the years. And 100% of them have disagreed with me that it's even remotely close. But I still argue. I think it's very similar, because in the acting world, here's what you're doing. You're getting a casting notice on a daily basis of what a studio's looking for, a casting agent's looking for, and you're trying to match up the people you represent to fit that. And sometimes you're matching up someone that doesn't necessarily fit the bill, but you think could do the job. And now you have to convince the casting agent why that person's a good fit. It's identical to the recruiting world. And that's why I think I could do it. I think I'd have a shot at it.
I see the correlation. I'm on Team Ryan here. I think there is a correlation between the two. Not only the name, but I think there is. You're representing, you're paying somebody. And I'll even go a step further, Ryan. You want to hear my philosophy a step further on that?
Sure.
I think that after everything that happened with COVID, employees, workers are going to actually seek out recruiting and staffing firms as their agent of record, if you will, because they don't have I think they're going to lose faith in end user customers. With shutting down doors and closing by state or city or business decisions, imagine that same person who was working for a staffing firm or recruitment firm who could then just be, oh, that business closed, but I have another opening here. Would you like to work there?
Yeah.
It's no different.
No, it's no different. And actually, that's been our bread and butter. That's how we've operated. And it's probably going back to those days working as an agent and a manager down in Hollywood of we're not throwing jobs by someone. We're finding the candidate and then finding out what they want and then going out there and getting it.
Yeah.
And that's where our model has always been a little bit different than traditional. So I completely agree with you. And that's really what we've done for 5 years. So
yeah, back in the day, 20 years ago, that you'd be able to charge the candidate to find that position for you. I wish that was coming back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Trust me, it wouldn't be a bad thing on our end, at least. But in the acting world, they used to do that as well, and there's still groups out there that will do that, where it's people would come with the impression when they would meet with us as agents or managers. I did both, and they really do the exact same thing. They just have different names, and they would think, well, how much do I need to pay you? And it's like, oh no, you only pay me if I get a job for you. I only get a percentage, because there were so many people out there that charged like, you have to give us $1,000 for us to represent you. I said, yeah, that's just not how it goes. But I know the old days of recruiting, it was that way. But
when I started in 2006, that was actually for 2 years. I had to fight that same answer, which was, people were hesitant to submit their resume or talk with me because they didn't know how much they needed to pay me to help find them a job. And that was just a change of culture at that time in 2006 and 2007. And I think that really changed after that last recession, which is, the unemployment rate spiked again. And it's very similar to what we're going through now. But yeah, it was fascinating at that time to have those discussions with oh, so how much are you charging? I was like, I'm not charging you anything. The customer will pay me if they like you, and then so that changed. So.
Oh yeah, no, I dealt with that too. Right when I jumped in, that just rang a bell. That I would have those discussions as well. Well, how much do you charge? Well, what's the cost? It's like, no, there's no charge to it at all. We're on the same team here. I'm representing you, and we're going to go get this job, and they pay me to find you, but it doesn't affect you. In fact, it's free for you. And you'd have to explain that. And I had that situation many times where you're explaining the process to people, just lifting the curtain back so that they understand it.
So what makes you, how did you get these accolades when it comes to the Fortune 10? Like, what is your secret? What do customers receive from you that they don't receive from other recruiting firms and staffing firms?
Well, it's hard to say, to be honest, like what someone else is doing or not doing that doesn't work for us. It'd be a mistake for me to say we're great, we do this that no one else does. Honestly, here's been our approach this whole time. We're upfront, genuine, and honest. And I know that that's so cliche to say, but we're just upfront, genuine, and honest. When we talk to a candidate, we're upfront, genuine, and honest. When we talk to a hiring manager, we're upfront, genuine, and honest. And what I never liked, and it's worked for people, so it's not like this is a terrible thing if anyone does it, but I just never liked the scripted conversations. Yeah. And how I'm talking to you now, for example, is how I would talk to a hiring manager, which probably is a terrible thing to do and may cost us a lot of business. But this is how I would talk to them, because they're normal people. And I just never liked the scripted aspect of, you're almost reading line by line. Yeah. And I've dealt with that on my end. And it just comes across phony, like you don't know what you're doing. So we just have honest conversations. First of all, we are very lucky to get into a company to begin with. We don't take that for granted. So to even get our foot in the door is a huge deal. But then once we're in there, it's like, all right, now it's showtime, because if we don't produce, if we don't get them what they need, that door is going to close quickly. So once we actually are very transparent with them in the process, with the hiring manager, and we get that order, we drop everything. We go full bore at it. And to give you an example, we pulled in a position, a controller job, because I focus primarily on accounting and finance with a company I'd never worked with. In fact, up until this point, I had never heard of them, but they're a very big growing company. once I got that order, for the next 48 hours, everything was put on pause and I focused solely on them. I probably reached out to 400 candidates, all within a 100-mile radius of this company. I know some of those people are not going to work because they're going to be too far away, but it's that don't leave any stone unturned.
Right.
You look at every single person. So within 24 hours, I'd already submitted 3 candidates to this hiring manager.
Wow.
And I had another 15 plus that I was still in process with. But here's a unique thing about that. Once we submitted those 3 candidates, I felt like the 3 that I submitted even after them were better. But at that point, the hiring manager said, I'm working with so many other recruiters. We have so many candidates. Let's just stick with your 3 that you have now. And we're going to put those other people on hold. At this point, we have the finalists for the position, but it was the reality of just being able to say, we're going to focus 100% on this. We're going to find candidates, because the reality is, I feel like if we don't fill a job in 24 to 48 hours, the likelihood goes significantly.
That's a great bar to set. Do you set that for your whole team?
We set that for everyone. No one's in trouble for that, and you never want to give up. I've had positions where a week's gone by and I haven't found someone, and you're losing hair over it, and you're like, oh my God, I'm never. And then you find that perfect person for that. But realistically, if I can find 3 to 5 candidates that are great for this job in 24 hours, it also will kill the competition, because if you come in a week later, it's like, hey, even if you submitted someone that's similar to mine, it's like, well, we already have 5 that are like that we had a week ago that we're in process with. So we're going to put that person on hold.
Right.
So
no, it's first one gets it. That's the name of the game. How do you, I mean, I would imagine, and this is what a lot of people have mentioned to me in the past, is they find the perfect candidate, but then they email them, they call them, and they text them, and they still don't respond. I guess you just kind of cast a big enough net that you're going to be doing that process, but you're talking with enough people in that 24 hours to create a top 3.
Yeah, correct. And trust me, there are those times where you know for a fact I have the person. If they only will pick up the phone and return my voicemail or email or text or any of I've been there.
How many times have you actually wanted to like drive to their house and be like, you submitted a resume, answer your phone?
I know. I've had that, and it happens to everyone. But here's what I started doing early in my career. I don't care who doesn't respond. I only care who does respond.
You have to.
Okay.
You have to.
Because if you're kicking yourself for this person who won't respond to you, but you think they're perfect, you might ignore those 5 candidates that are really strong, that are going to get an offer for that position, because you're so focused on that person that's not paying attention to you or not responding for whatever reason for that. So
it's where that, the OCD kind of has to be blurred with, understanding the bigger picture. You can't miss the tree for the forest, right?
Exactly. And in this case with the controller position, I knew that I probably had a couple of stronger candidates than the first 3 I was presenting, but I won't waste someone's time. Like if I know that I'm presenting a candidate that is not going to be even a close match, I'm not submitting that person.
Right.
I think that's also benefit us.
That's how you get on the unapproved list.
So it's not throwing junk. You have here's the thing. Okay, here's the difference between what I've experienced with our company and when I worked for a larger recruiting firm. You weren't allowed to do this at the firms I worked for. Drop everything and focus 100% on a given position. Right. And I feel like that's our advantage, where I can do that. I can spend 6 to 8 hours making phone calls, talking to people we know, getting referrals, scouring LinkedIn, to the point that most people's brains would explode. It can be boring work at times, and some people don't want to do that. But again, it's that don't leave a stone unturned. Go after every single person, because if you look at it, it's kind of like if you have a test in school. And I used to be good at taking those tests, and it was always A, B, C, or D. Okay. Even if I didn't know the answer, I knew A, B, C, or D. One of those is the right answer.
Of course, it has to be.
So whenever you work a position, even the most difficult to fill positions, someone out there is going to get that job. So it's like, all I have to do is find that person and talk to that person before someone else.
Yeah.
So that's why I cast the wide net, where it's like, if I talk to every controller in the 100-mile radius, one of them's going to probably get the job, or accounting manager, depending on what your ultimately parameters are for the position. So it's like, if I talk to everyone, one of these people is going to get the job. All I have to do is find that person first.
So even if the customer is okay with relocating fees, do you still limit it to the surrounding area to eliminate that from the discussion? Or, if they said we will pay relocation, will you open it up further, or do you kind of just focus on a local candidates?
Yeah, if they are open to relocation, but you have to understand that adds, every time there's something else added to the mix, it's going to narrow your pool. So when you relocate someone, you might find that perfect candidate for them, but now you have to have another separate interview with that person who's interested in relocating to find out, are you interested or are you really able to do it? Do you have kids in school? Do you have to sell a house? Because a lot of times what would happen is a company would say, yeah, we're open to relocating someone. You're like, all right, great. I have a perfect person in Texas and the job's in California, right? And everything's great. And then you wouldn't ask the questions to the candidate who told you they're ready to move to California. Well, what does that mean? Do you have to, I have to sell my house first, but as soon as my house sells, I'm ready to go. Well, my kids are in school for 6 months, but after that, it's like, so you're not really, and you have to ask those questions. And honestly, most people learn the hard way by not asking those questions, where you get bitten from it and you're like, all right, next time I have to do this. And honestly, that's how I learned.
Well, and it's another piece of negotiation, right? They might like the salary, but then not like the relocation benefits or, the timing of the start date. So the more factors you're negotiating with the employee, the more factors you have to negotiate with the customer. It gets more complicated. I love the philosophy of just looking, even if they say unlimited budget for relocation, I still believe, that's what I was asking you. I still believe you start within 60 or 100 miles, start with the easy ones and see, move forward from there. Many people hear your story and I'm sure they're in disbelief about how you can dedicate your time. You've had a lot of success in your life, and you've also given back to your community so much in terms of your presence in the community. But one of the things that I think that a lot of people get discouraged is that they'll get 3 or 4 orders. They'll work the orders, 8 hours, phone calls, line them up, and then not get the position. And then they get so defeated. How many months did you go without getting a placement? And did you get defeated at that time? Like in the past 5 years, what was your longest dry spell?
Okay. Right when I started. So here's the unique part. Again, when I went into this as the sky high dream, can I make $60,000 a year?
I remember that conversation.
Running my own business.
I remember that conversation.
So when I did that, I got so lucky. I filled a job, I think, within the first week or two, and it was like $15,000+. Okay. Super lucky, random, just happened to match up on there. Filled a couple jobs after that. Now there's a point of why I'm telling you this. So long story short, it probably was somewhere in that $30,000 to $40,000 range in terms of fees. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's going to be phenomenal. This is how it's going to be. And then I went about 6 months after that without filling one thing.
A 6-month dry spell. Do you hear that, everybody who's listening to this show? 6-month dry spell, but you never gave up. You never gave up, did you? Right?
I'll tell you what, during that period, here's the thing. When you work on your own, at this point, I have no employees. It's just me. And you have no money coming in, and you don't have a boss. You have none of that. You feel like you're unemployed because you go through that dry spell. You have to tell yourself mentally, I actually have a job, even though I'm not seeing anything.
You don't get a paycheck. You don't have a boss.
So
you don't have a time card.
Nothing. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. I started looking, should I drive Uber? Anything? Minimum wage sounded phenomenal in that point, because it was like, I felt like I had no job. How am I going to support my family? And again, it's like when I decided to quit the recruiting business 2 weeks in. Thank God I didn't do that. I procrastinated again, because I kept saying to myself, and here's something, if someone's out there that's dealing with this, to encourage them, and given our landscape right now, it's likely that someone is. I started doing the math. If I was to get paid, hypothetically, I'm using fake numbers, $10 an hour, how many hours would I have to work where it would become worth it based on making one fee. So in other words, if you're making $5,000 a month, okay, doing a job, that sounds great. But the reality is, if you're going to make $15,000 to $20,000 on a placement, then that would mean 3 to 4 months you could go without filling a job and you would make the same amount of money. And there's more potential in that, as opposed to, well, I'll make $5,000 this month. And I'd have to keep telling myself that, but it was 6 months. And here's the unique part about that. If that scenario that I told you, where I filled a few jobs at first and then had the dry spell, if it was reversed, I would have gone back. I would have quit.
Yeah, you got that initial positive reinforcement that it could be done. And so you got the cash flow to survive, which is, two key important. But
if it was the first 6 months of a dry spell, which it easily could have been.
Oh, we see it all the time.
I would have walked away.
Now, did you have orders during that time? You just couldn't fill them? Like, how much of the time were you getting the orders but couldn't get the wins? I think that also plays a role, right? If you're submitting the orders and you're just getting to the second, you're like, it holds you on. We have another interview next week. You're like, okay, another interview next week. Let's get me one more week and I'll work hard. And then if that one doesn't go through, maybe you have one of those other submissions. So it's kind of like a week by week by week. Did you have that? Or was it like no orders? You were just twiddling your thumbs, nothing to do.
Well, it's a combination of all of it, to be honest. Going back, I mean, it was 5 years ago to remember exactly. I just remember it being a combination of all of it, where I'd have an order and then I couldn't find the candidate. Or I'd have an order that was that needle in a haystack and I'd work hard, but, I couldn't find that perfect person that would match that position. Or I would find a great candidate, but there was nowhere to put them, or there was nothing at all. But what you said is really unique, and you're correct in that. It's those just little tiny wins that can keep you going. I remember Tom Hanks was talking about very early in his acting career, before no one knew who he was, when he was working part-time as selling peanuts at the Oakland A's game and doing acting. He referred back to a time where he said, I had a callback, which is basically your second audition. You go for an audition with like 100 people. They call back 20 of them. So a callback is good, but it's not like anything great. He said, I remember I had a call back for like a toothpaste commercial or like a pizza commercial. And it was like the most exciting thing. Like, okay, I should hang on for another couple weeks as an actor instead of going full, and quitting. And so it's those little wins that keep you going. But you just have to know that there's going to be flows like that. And it's not that you're doing something wrong. It's just, things just aren't going your way.
Even when you're successful, I mean, there's so many variables with staffing and recruiting in general. I mean, the economy is one big one. We can get into that in terms of fourth quarter outlook, but the economy, but also customer cash flow, employees that are looking for a job. I mean, it's just so many variables. I think that one of the challenges, when you're a good recruiter, you can take any variable and still be successful. When you aren't a good recruiter and you're lucky, then that's where it gets hurt. You find out very quickly in those times, do you have what it takes to be successful or not? I think we'll always remember 2020 as a recruiting nightmare, but not a nightmare, but almost a unique in recruiting, in the fact that in January, we had a 2% unemployment rate. In March, we had a 24% unemployment rate. And so that this like swing from back to forth, the value of recruiting and staffing went from trying to cherry pick the very best talent from the existing workforce that's working to, we have to go through 100 resumes for every job that's posted, and that's a big skill set difference. And if you're not prepared for both extremes, you're not going to be successful. Do you agree with that? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. When you go through dry spells, I wouldn't say you question everything, but you start looking at everything. What am I doing? Can I do something better? What do I have to do on here? What's the market? Because we would work a market in Northern California, where before I started my own company, when I worked for one of the largest companies in Northern California, our specific segment that we had to focus on was not doing well, whereas San Francisco and San Jose were doing great. We were in the East Bay, which is like Berkeley, Oakland area. And our market was very much down, and we kept getting questioned by the people above us. Why aren't you guys doing what San Jose and San Francisco is doing? So sometimes, there's just nothing you can do. But at the end of the day, you want to look at every aspect of what you're doing there and say, can I do this better? Can I do this differently? I think that, to be honest, there's a lot of flexibility you need to have in a market like this, or in a downturn. What do I have to do? Don't come across from a desperate standpoint, because that can be heard over the phone. You don't want to sound desperate for every.
You can feel it over the phone.
You can feel it. You can totally feel it. But just when you're able to have a genuine, honest conversation with someone, and you can talk to them, hey, well, what if you're not interested in working with a recruiter, but you need this position filled? What's holding you back? Cash flow. Okay, so then let's talk about that. Here's what we can do, and be creative with that. Like, I worked for companies that were so black and white. It was like, if they don't pay 25% and they don't pay within 10 days, you can't work the order. And it's like, but what do we care? Like, if it's
that's the downside of using big companies. They have to standardize it somewhere.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't do that. And that was one of the things I didn't like doing, because I said, what do I care if they pay in 10 days or 30 days? Most companies sign that they're going to pay in 10 and don't even pay for 60.
Exactly.
So we're already doing that. So why do we have to now draw this hard line where it's like, I won't do this? So you just have to be flexible with stuff. So what we would start doing is, all right, can we break up fees? Can we give credit to companies? I'm drawing a blank on what would be the proper term, but you can be your own credit department. Okay, so if I'm filling a job with you, hey, for 4%, we will let you pay over 6 months.
Like an interest fee almost, or temp to perm. I mean, temp to perm does the same philosophy. You're paying over time, really, with the conversion rate at the end.
Yeah, and it's like, we're going to get you approved. Okay, we've approved your company. You can pay us over a 6 to 12 month period. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but you can spread it out. And it's fine. Again, these are just. You have to be creative in a market like this, because when a hiring manager goes from a 2% to a 24% market as far as unemployment, they may not even feel like they need to use you, because they have 300 resumes for a position. And the reality is, once they get through those 300, then they're going to be like, this was garbage.
They still don't have the candidate they're looking for.
and that's why, if you've given up, I was just talking to one of our recruiters yesterday. If you've given up in the process because it's been 2 weeks and you've been calling and emailing and they didn't respond back, it may have taken them 2 weeks to realize they don't have a candidate.
Right.
And now they don't remember who you are because you've given up reaching out to them. They didn't save your number. They don't know your email. They have 1,000 emails. They can't even search for it. And that's why you want to be persistent and stay on it.
Yep. So you've always considered yourself the chief recruiting officer, right? That's something that you still stick with in terms of when, like, your belief in that you're the chief recruiting officer. Are you?
Yeah, I mean,
do you consider yourself also the chief credit officer in that case? In your example that you were talking about, do you have to say, hold on, let me talk to the chief credit officer?
I'm going to tell you a secret.
This is the chief credit officer.
I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to ruin. Man, I hope none of our clients. I'm not. I'm an honest person. I'm an honest person. Okay, but there have been times where I know I'm going to approve something, but in negotiation, you have to say, "Let me check with my boss." Now that boss is me.
Yes.
So let me call you back in 10 minutes. And I feel so embarrassed saying this, but okay, I have.
We've all done it, right? We've all done it. Okay. Hey, Mr. Hiring Manager, I'm completely fine with it. Sounds great to me, but let me check with my boss just so I don't get fired over this, and I'll get back to you. All right, here's what my boss said. They won't do 20% and 1 year guarantee. Could you do 25%? Then they'll do the 1 year. So again, you have to. So most of the time I wouldn't do that. I'd just say, hey, I'm in charge. I can approve this. But we get creative when we're we're scrappy, as Gary Vee always says. Are you scrappy with your use of sales?
Well, yeah, because here's the other thing you have to keep in mind. If you're just a pushover to a company and they know, hey, everything I ask Ryan, he just automatically does. Even if I was fine with it, then it's going to come to a point where it's like, hey, so you charged me 20% on this last order. Can you do it at 10? Ryan always says yes.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it's going to backfire on you.
I've preached on this. I've done a lot of videos. I have this philosophy called the replacement, your average placement fees. Really, it's your placement value. You as a recruiter, especially the full desk recruiters, like on your team, what is your placement value? How much do you get every time you make one placement? What's your average over the last 10? And so I talk a lot about this because I believe recruiters undervalue their skills and undervalue the value that they provide to their customers. And so they, as a recruitment firm, as a staffing firm, you provide so much value to your customer. You should be charging 40%. I swear, I think we're way undercharging, but if you want to look at how much your average placement is, look at all of your placements that you made, whether it was a replacement guarantee or not, whether it was a discounted fee, whatever it was, what was your profit for the last 10 placements? And then you take that number and you divide by 10. That's your average placement value as a recruiter. There's so many ways you can ruin that by giving discounts too quickly, but there's also so many ways you can increase your value, not increase in your work, you're increasing the value through, just negotiating techniques, kind of like what you're saying, but not even that extreme. It's really just, sorry, I can't go down to 10. I could do 20, but at the end of 9 months, if you want to do a temp to perm, you can get the 10% at that time. You can do a conversion fee at that time. That's no problem. I'm happy to service you. But for those first 9 months, you're going to have to run them as a contract worker because I need to maintain my value. Or another one is really just adding that 1-year guarantee like you did right from the beginning. You're adding so much value in that 1-year guarantee that's unheard of. And you still have it on your website, in terms of the value that you provide. You believe in your candidates and the candidates believe in you. And so it's a two-way streak. But
yeah, and I've told people, because they've asked me about the 1-year guarantee. I wouldn't call them competitors, people that work for other companies that I'm close with and I talk to, colleagues, I guess, could be the term, but they'll say, well, how do you do that? And the reality is, again, one of our unique approaches, we don't talk people into a job.
Right.
I'm going to probably get an offer today on someone that's, it's going to be a tight fit because of what she wants salary wise, what they're going to offer. She would be making a mistake to turn down this position, in my opinion. Maybe not, but in my opinion,
sure.
I will not tell her that.
Yeah,
I will at the end of the day. If she asks me my opinion, I'm going to share that. But we're not going to we're not going to twist someone's arm and say you have to take this. And I've heard so many stories recently of people that say I'm not working with this agency ever again because I talked to someone yesterday, and they said that they got an offer that was a little bit lower than what they wanted. And the recruiter they were working for started to insult them and say, you're not a very good candidate. You should take this. And which, first of all, she was actually a really good candidate. And I said, did he think that was going to make you say, oh, you know what? You've convinced me. I mean, what are we doing? I had a friend that was signing up at a gym, and one of their selling points, the guy that was trying to sign him up at the gym was, well, clearly you're not happy with your body. And it was he was just like, how is that?
I think I'm going to go to the gym across the street.
Take my money. You nailed it. Clearly you're not happy with. And so, we don't twist people's arms. So giving a 1-year guarantee to me is nothing because I'm not putting someone in there that I think is going to leave in 6 months.
You believe in yourself, right?
Yeah, I'm putting someone that I know is a good fit that wants this job long term. And that's why, again, has that really benefited us? Yeah, it's benefited us in hugely.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to work with same candidates again who were let off because of COVID or a downturn at all? Did you get a chance to kind of revisit some candidates that you had success with and now can replace them?
Some, but very few. Surprisingly, during this downturn where you, and again, maybe it's because of what I focus on.
Yeah, finance and
other recruiters, but I'm focused on accounting and finance primarily. I wouldn't do other things. I do a lot of other things.
It's usually the last person to cut is a accountant and controller.
and I'm surprised that they people are working, and I mean I could count on one hand how many people I'm aware have been laid off. And then it's how quickly do you want to get back to work there. And also because of the climate that we're in right now, I've seen nervousness with candidates jumping into a new company because they're working remote. And it's do I really want to go to this company? Again, if they're unemployed, there's a little bit more flex, but do I want to go to this company sight unseen where I'm not even meeting anyone? I'm sitting at home. I might do a Zoom call daily, but that's really it. So I've seen a lot of people say, you know what, I'm just going to kind of ride this out a little bit longer with unemployment.
I mean, it's quality of life plays a role into compensation. And I think that's going to be a negotiating tactic moving forward, at least for the foreseeable future. You know, can you work from home or not? And, you know, what's mandatory, what's not mandatory? It just gets a little bit more complicated moving forward. But I agree with you. I think people are nervous to leave. And I think if they're willing to leave, like I mentioned, I believe that there's going to be more candidates that are going to be looking for, you know, a way out, a second option. They're not going to put all their eggs in one basket with a customer that may close up again. Whether it's true or not, you know, I think that there's that thought in their head, at least a little bit. And so,
and one of the big selling points that we've always had has been the quality of life commute situation. So like if you look at it from this standpoint, if someone's doing a 1 hour commute each way, that's 2 hours a day, that's 10 hours a week. You know, you're talking about 500 plus hours, if my math is correct. 520 hours a year. And if you break that down of how many days they actually are spending in the car for that, our selling point, and again, if I didn't have a 1 year old, if I had a 1 year old that actually slept at night, I could do the math a lot quicker. So, but
I hear you, brother. I hear you, brother.
So obviously, 10
who wants
days
to help us? 520 divided by 24, I guess.
Yeah, my daughter goes to bed at 1, wakes up at 3. It's a good 2 hours. So if you do the math, like 10 days is 240, so 20 days will be 480. So you're talking about nearly a month spent in your car driving. So my selling point for someone like that is you can work 5 minutes from home. What if I was able to give you 30 extra days this year to do whatever you wanted? You know, how important, how valuable is that? Well, now what do you say to someone? Because whether they work an hour away or 5 minutes away, they're still in their same house. It doesn't matter when you're working remote. So in that part, you've had to be, well, this isn't a selling point at this moment. So you can't really use
it'll come back. I'm sure it'll come back.
Yeah.
So if you, when you run your team of recruiters, talk about your key performance indicators or KPI. How do you relate that to your recruiters in terms of, hey, we don't know what's going on in Q4 coming up, but you got to keep doing them. You got to keep, got to know your numbers. You got to know, how many posts, how many submissions you have to make, how many interviews you need. Talk about how you manage it, or how do you set the expectation for your recruiters from that standpoint?
Sure. So one of the things I definitely got away from right away when I started my own firm here was get away from the busy work that doesn't, in my opinion, and experience, create dollars. Our job is so simple: get the order and fill it. That's it. That's our whole focus. Get the order, fill the order. That's it. So I got away from metrics right away, where I would tell our recruiters, don't report metrics to me. I don't want to see them. I don't care.
Okay.
You're not entering them into a system. I don't care. When I first started out as a recruiter, I was one of the top performing metrics people in the United States for the second largest staffing company in the world. So I'm talking I was top 10.
For my numbers, statistics wise,
metrics. My numbers, I should have been fired months, but I don't know why they still were giving me a desk, but I kept getting pats on the back. Ryan, your metrics are 24.3. I don't even know what that meant. It was just like, great. So-and-so, who has some of the worst, is the best recruiter in the company. So maybe I should do the opposite. So we got away from that. But what I always tell each recruiter, specifically in this time, because the reality is, we don't know. No one can forecast what Q4 is going to look like, because no one could have forecasted any of this year. We have an election coming up. So things probably are not improving dramatically in terms of companies forecasting and confidence.
Confidence.
From a confidence standpoint. But I tell our recruiters, you have to know your own metrics, because here's why I say that. So, and I'm going to use fake numbers here, but if you know that you have to do 50 business development activities to get one job order, then you can say, okay, if I want to get one job order a week, I have to do 50 business development activities, which means if I'm working Monday through Friday, I have to do 10 a day. 10 a day, 50 a week gets me one job order. And
Easy.
knowing what it is during this time, because that number is probably way different 2 years ago than what it is today.
Sure.
Well, I know I fill and again, I'm using fake numbers, at a 25% ratio, meaning out of 4 orders, I'm going to fill 1.
Okay.
Then you can at least do the math and say, if I do 10 business development activities a day, I'll get 1 order a week. That's 4 a month on average.
Yep.
I'm going to fill 1 on average out of that 4. And my average placement fee, let's say, is $20,000. That means $20,000 a month times 12, $240,000 is what I can make just knowing this. So that's what you're doing in terms of knowing your own metrics, but it also will keep you motivated and mentally still in the game if you're not seeing the success when you're looking at, all right, hey, it's every 75 reach outs, it's every 100 reach outs. I'm only at 75 and it's going to be 100. So I haven't hit that magic number yet. It's also knowing something that my old partner taught me that I thought was great, and I didn't understand it at the time, but now I do. Write down every single send out you have, and then at the end of the day, figure out what you're making per send out. Now, he told me this, and I said, I'm not making anything per send out. I only make it if they get the job. He goes, no, you have to understand that if you have 10 send outs and you make a $20,000 placement based on 10 send outs, and every time you get a send out, it's $2,000 based on your average. And you need to look at it that way, because you can't fill a job if you don't get a send out. But that's going to keep you going, where it's like, hey, I have 10 of them. I don't have any, I don't see anything yet. But you can at least say, well, I've made X amount of dollars based on my averages. That's where the metrics, in my opinion, are important to understand and to know for yourself.
That's amazing. That's so well said, Ryan. I mean, that's just so motivational right now. I want to go start counting my my productivity in terms of the numbers, because I'm a big fan of those KPIs like you were mentioning. And I think that the power of your group, of Peter Hunt Group, is really the idea that you can allow your team to develop their own strategies and plans and grow. You put the onus on them to perform based on their own metrics, which is awesome. I think it gives them the independence that they're looking for under the structure, but the cool thing about that is I never thought of putting a dollar amount on it. That's like next level. That's really cool.
It'll keep you motivated when things are slow. It really is. It's important to know those things. And the people that tend to work for us are people that are kind of tired of the busy work that they were doing. So honestly, KPIs, again, any company that is having their employees report KPIs, I am not saying that is a bad idea at all. Because so we're only hiring a seasoned recruiter that we treat them like an adult. I don't call them at 9 o'clock in the morning and say, are you at your desk working? I don't care. Again, get the order and fill it. At the end of the day, if you're a recruiter and want to be treated like an adult, PeterHuntCorp.com. And it's crazy that it's not that way. But I'll tell you what, I had another conversation with a person a few days ago that we were talking about, like, in our world, and everyone's experienced this in some form or another, you're a sponge. And when you have a boss above you, for the most part, they're making money off of you. So you're a sponge. So it doesn't matter what you do. You're squeezing that sponge and trying to get every single drop out of them. So we had a recruiter that was phenomenal. She'd put up, 500,000 plus every single year. And it would be like, all right, Donna, what about next year? There was never, you never had the sense that you were doing a good job. It was always like, all right, well, we had a sales guy in our office, and he was one of the top guys. In fact, I think he was the top guy in our company. And it was like, all right, well, you had a good year. This is exactly the words that our boss told him. And I loved our boss. He was great. But this is just kind of the world that we live in. And he said, all right, Cleve, I know you're number one in the company, but that means nothing for next year. So what are you going to do next? And it was just like, man, and here's what it struck me. If he's number one in the company and treated like that, what happens when he's number 6 in the company? That's your reward. And I don't want people to feel that way with us, where it's like, man, you're treated like an adult. Yeah. You know what's best. If you work at 9 p.m. to midnight and that's your prime time, do it. I don't care. You do what works for you.
Yep. No, it's amazing philosophy. And that's a true entrepreneur. I think taking your experience and molding into a company that's unique, that's different, that you want to surround yourself with team members that you want to treat like an adult. So that's I love the approach.
Yeah, and the reality is you can do this job from so many different places, and because we have phones today, like it's all, you know. I was talking to someone who's on vacation right now, and she was just starting with us, and I said, you know, you're going to be at the airport. When you're at the airport killing time, spend an hour like reaching out to people, like, you know, you have time in between your leisure time to do this. I mean, I can't tell you how many deals I've closed on vacation. I filled a job that I was at. I think I was at the Luxor in Las Vegas on one of those trams where it's kind of, you're not walking, it's moving, and it's me and my wife, and you know. We're going back on there, and I had a person that was basically, I'm either going to make $50,000 or I'm going to make zero. And I felt pretty confident she was going to turn down the offer. And again, I look at my phone. It's probably like 9 o'clock at night. She shoots me a text. I'm going to take the offer. And it's like on the tram, you kind of collapse. Like, oh my God. I just like, you know, because that's the crazy part about this business. Yeah. You can come in second place every single time, and that's phenomenal, and you won't make $1. You know, and it's like, man,
you get your pat on the back.
Yeah, and it's like I would have worked just as hard if she turned it down, but you have those, and I tell people all the time, you can work from wherever you want. Take your computer with you. You don't have to work, but you know, don't feel stuck to a desk or a location. Have fun, enjoy your life, and you'll do better recruiting when you're having fun. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important for me anyway, to have family time in terms of, you know, work hard, play hard. But now that I have 2 kids now, and I think you have a 1-year-old, right? And so like, now that I have kids, it's all about, you know, work hard and then spend time with family. And then if there's any extra time, then I'll play a little bit. How have you been adjusting? You know, you mentioned that you're not sleeping much, and my 8-month-old, you know, he wakes up a couple times overnight, so it's been rough too.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, so I know I'm not alone. But it's been good. It's just been exhausting. I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I don't feel like I've had one good day in the last year where I woke up saying I feel energetic.
Okay, like, here's the secret. Get grandma and grandpa to take your kid and just go away for a weekend.
I hear you. I hear you on that. But I mean, that we're so invested in our daughter, in the sense of, like, you know, really either I'm around our daughter or my wife's around our daughter almost 24/7. I mean, that's really how it is.
How's Rose doing with everything? She's enjoying being a mom?
Oh yeah, she loves it. And because we, you know, our story, this is a whole tangent, which I won't go into, but you know, we were in a position where we always wanted to have a baby, and we didn't think we could have a baby, and got to a point where you'd kind of like walked away from that dream that, it's just not going to happen. And then out of the blue one day, there it was. And it was like, man, how did this take so long? And
stop trying.
Yeah, exactly. And it was something that was just so, it was just hard. It was almost surreal, where you couldn't even wrap your brain around it, because for so long it just wasn't happening. And you just think, well, something must be wrong. And when we had that, so with Rose and even with myself, like, to us, it's like the greatest treasure in the world is in our house, and we're around her. And that's why, we could call grandma and grandpa and say, hey, watch her. But to us, it's like, no, this is the most valuable thing, because we were so convinced that it just wasn't happen. And it did. But it also leads to a lot of exhaustion, where it's basically I'm watching her and working, and then going to sleep.
Yeah. I hear you. Even I'll argue that even if you didn't have trouble, you would still consider your daughter the greatest gift in the world. I mean, it's amazing to have kids. I'm sure that. But I will have to recommend. You know, did you get your free copy of Work, Passion, Life Balance? You need this copy here. I'll send you the link.
Take that one off the wall and send it to me.
That's my book I published in May, and I'll give it to you for free for being on the podcast. But it's you need to make sure you take care of yourself, so you can give to your daughter and give to your wife as much energy as you can. But don't be afraid to take a little weekend off, you know.
Well, here's where I make up for it. I'll tell you this right now. I'm the biggest sports fan in the world. I'm the biggest baseball fan in the world. That's all I ever want to do growing up was be a professional baseball player. I probably watched 2, maybe 3 innings this year. I live in San Diego.
Yeah.
The Padres made the playoffs. Until that was announced on TV, yeah, I know.
Idea.
That was my reaction too. I'm in San Diego. I'm a baseball fan, but I have so little time right now because of our daughter, and I'm watching the baby channel 24/7, and I'm like, I didn't even know they were good, and they made the playoffs. Tampa Bay and the Marlins. Tampa Bay's in. The Marlins apparently are on the bubble, but look good, and it's just like. No clue. I just happen to hear that in passing, and it's like, oh, wow. Oh, so that's where I'm making up for it.
Yeah. And you have to be a diehard fan to watch a game without any crowds in there, or to play a game. There are a lot of athletes are struggling with that too. I mean, that part of being an athlete is the crowd.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, but that's where I get the margin back. It's going to bed at 8:30 at night sometimes, when you don't want to, but you just know. Yeah. I mean, I miss everything basically, but in terms of sports, not, that's where I'm getting the time.
It gets
back.
better. Actually, after a year, it got much easier after Hannah turned a year, my oldest. She's 2.5 now, and it changes. Every stage is awesome. Every stage is beautiful. They learn so fast. But I think after that 1 year mark, it was like, okay, they start playing a little bit more independently, just a little bit more, you don't have to.
Well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen though, is you're going to look back, not you, I'm talking about me, but probably everyone 10 years, 15 years from now. And you're going to be like, man, that was such an amazing time. Like, that was a time 24/7. I was able to be around her. I hope this isn't the case, but I mean, I know how teenagers are, now she doesn't want anything to do with me. She's 16 and I can't even get a word out of her. And it's like, man, and I was complaining about watching her. So you have to appreciate it, even though I'm exhausted most of the time, but
Ryan, it doesn't happen at 16. It happens at 2 or 3.
Oh, geez, come on.
Daddy, I don't like you right now. I was like, all right, you don't like me right now.
So I really need to appreciate it even more. I hear you.
Yeah, terrible twos and I don't know what the 3-year-olds are called. But Ryan, it's great having you on the show. Let me if it is okay if I pull up your website and you can let's see here if I can just pull it up. Tell us a little bit about your website, anything that we should know on your website, or how customers or candidates can get a hold of you if they wanted to learn more about you and your business.
Yeah, sure. You can always go to peterhuntcorp.com. You can reach out to me anytime through that. We do when I talk about what my focus is, that's not our company focus. We have recruiters that really focus on every single industry and niche you can imagine. And I always tell people, focus on what you know, focus on what you enjoy, because if you hate working IT jobs, don't work IT jobs. So we do have everything. So we have a list of all the different areas, but to be honest, I mean, there's nothing that we don't touch. I have one recruiter.
So full industry, all industries. Okay.
Yeah, full industry. We're not industry or job focus specific. Each recruiter is, because like I said, I want them to specialize in what they know. I'm not going to work your IT order because I don't understand that. And I'm going to ruin your life because I'm going to be throwing garbage your way. I wouldn't do that. I'm going to focus on what I know, which is accounting and finance. But we have one recruiter, for example, she's placing like talent people, producers and, things like that, which, again, that's a very niche thing. It's more of an artist type of placement. We have recruiters that are doing nursing and IT and engineering and all of that. So, we really are an open door. But I tell company, if I cannot have confidence or we're going to fill a company's order, I tell them that right off the bat, like, hey, this is just because I don't want them to waste their time. And I'll even tell them, hey, here's a few people you can call. Sure. Because if you start working something that you really have no expertise in, true, you can always get lucky. But realistically, you're probably going to spend more time failing on that job than you would succeeding on the stuff that you know.
Yep. No, I 100% agree with you. And it's really people helping people. And if you're honest with your customer and you can refer to other businesses or recruiters that that can help them better, they'll remember that stuff. And when they do need an accountant or finance, they'll probably come back to you. That's the beauty of recruiting and staffing in general, is that it's always people helping people.
Sure. No, I completely agree. So yeah, so we do everything from direct hire, permanent jobs. Of course, we do temporary and temp to hire as well, which we've been so lucky that someone pointed us to USA Staffing. This is not a plug. I feel like this was like doctored. Hey Ryan, at this point,
okay,
at this mark, can you
cue the end? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'll again, you're sending me a free book, but let me point this out. So, when I first started doing this, there was a girl that had just left our company about 6 months before that she started her own company as well, and I would pick her brain on stuff, and she told me, hey, reach out to USA because you're going to be able to do temporary staffing, which you can't do for the most part on your own. I mean, there's just so many different things, as you know, of course,
sure.
To be certified in any state, let alone all 50. So to be able to do that. So that's been huge for us. That was a whole segment that I'm telling you right now, if we didn't have the relationship that we do with USA, that we would not be touching that, because it's just, it'd be too complicated. It would take so much time. So we do everything now because of USA in every single state, from temp to hire and direct hire. And we're, again, very thankful and blessed that we've had that relationship and connection.
I mean, I appreciate you as a partner too. I mean, we approached it from day one as a partnership, and your business has bloomed so well that, it's just, I'm so happy for you and your team, and how, you're a great father, and you're a great husband, and you're great to your community, and you're a great business partner from our point of view. So thank you for everything you do, Ryan.
I appreciate that so much. I do. Yeah.
Very good. Well, Ryan, is there anything else you'd like to say before I kick you off the screen and close out the show?
No, I think just one last point for people. I mean, as anyone who's in this business and industry right now knows, you're going through a very unprecedented time, a difficult time, a time where your stress levels are probably high, and you're not seeing the same success that you did previously in previous years, and just really stick with it. I mean, every single time that something like this happens, it does correct itself. It does get back to normal. This is a time that weeds you out. Unfortunately, it's a time where if you hate recruiting, you are going to quit right now, because it's not the most fun time we've ever had. But the reality is, if you don't love what you're doing, you're never going to have the perseverance to stick with it during the hard times. So it is a weeding out process. And if you love recruiting, the good news is the people that aren't going to be here in 6 months. So be encouraged with that, because you're gonna be in a smaller pool, but just stick with it. Things are gonna turn for you. And again, I always tell our recruiters, even when you're not finding the success, if you do nothing, it's guaranteed nothing's gonna happen. But if you keep plugging along at it and keep working at it, something will turn, and eventually will. So just stick in it, stay encouraged, and keep just plugging along, and you'll find that success. So
great. Thank you, Ryan. I'm going to let you get going, and I'm going to close out the show.
All right, Matthew. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. All right. That was an awesome show. Ryan, he is just one of my role models, because he took his skills, his raw talent as a recruiter, to build it into this company that's now, as he mentioned, the Fortune 10, on the preferred vendors list. And not only that, but he's getting accolades with those Fortune 10. So just great job for everything that he's done. And I think that his advice is very applicable to everybody in the recruiting and staffing industry today, which is really keep plugging along, figure out how to make it work, review your numbers on a personal level. Like you mentioned, is it 1 out of 50? Maybe it's now 1 out of 100. You just have to do a little bit more to get those orders. You have to do a couple more submissions to get those hires, but it's still doable. There are people hiring, there's businesses hiring. And I think his advice is perfect, especially during this time. So everybody, thank you for listening. I appreciate you as a follower, as a listener. This has been the Staffing Industry Discussion, and my name is Matt Klinsky. Until next week, talk to you soon.